It was a normal Tuesday morning, the kind where nothing unusual seemed likely. The FBI director, a man who had spent decades serving his country and keeping people safe, woke up early and went through his usual morning routine. The sun was just beginning to rise, casting soft golden light through the windows of his quiet home. He made his coffee, read the headlines, and glanced at his schedule for the day. Meetings, briefings, and some paperwork awaited him. Nothing out of the ordinary. Life had been orderly for him, and he preferred it that way. There was comfort in routine, in knowing what to expect. After breakfast, he dressed in a sharp professional suit, straightened his tie, and left his home. The streets were calm, the city slowly waking up. He got into his car and started driving to his office, thinking about the tasks ahead. Traffic was light, and he enjoyed the brief moments of solitude in his vehicle, listening to the soft hum of the radio and watching the morning light reflecting off the buildings. He never expected what was about to happen. As he drove through a familiar neighborhood, he noticed a police cruiser behind him. At first, he thought it might be a routine traffic stop, perhaps for a minor issue he had not noticed. He slowed down, signaling as appropriate, ready to cooperate as he always did. He had faced dangerous situations many times in his career, but never like this. He had always been the one giving orders, directing operations and handling crises, but today, he would be on the receiving end of a life-threatening situation. Without warning, the police car followed him closely, and then, as he came to a stop at a red light, the officer stepped out and pointed a gun at him. The director froze, his heart racing. Fear and confusion washed over him. He could not understand why this was happening. He raised his hands slowly, keeping them visible, and tried to speak, but the officer did not lower his weapon or respond. The world seemed to shrink to the immediate danger in front of him, the cold metal of the gun and the officer's unflinching stance. People passing by stopped to watch, some pulling out their phones to record what they were witnessing. The director could see the disbelief in their eyes, their shock at seeing a man being held at gunpoint in broad daylight. He tried to stay calm, knowing that any sudden movement could make the situation worse. He reminded himself of his training, the countless scenarios he had prepared for, yet nothing had prepared him for being the target himself. The officer shouted commands, ordering the director to step out of the car. Each word felt heavy, loaded with danger. The director complied carefully, slowly opening the door and stepping out with his hands still raised. He tried to speak, to tell the officer who he was, to show identification, but the officer was focused only on his own perception of a threat. Miscommunication and misunderstanding had created a perfect storm of tension. Bystanders grew anxious, some stepping closer, others moving away, unsure of what to do. The director noticed the fear in their faces, the confusion, and it mirrored his own. He realized how quickly a situation could spiral out of control, how fragile safety could be, and how vulnerable anyone could be when someone else misjudged the circumstances. He tried to keep his voice steady, explaining calmly that he was the FBI director, a federal official, someone who posed no threat. But the officer refused to listen, convinced that he was dealing with a dangerous person. The director's mind raced. He thought about his family, his colleagues, the people who relied on him to be safe and rational. He also thought about the officer, realizing that fear and stress could cloud anyone's judgment no matter their training. He wondered if there was a way to reach through to him, to make him understand the truth without provoking a violent response. Every second felt like an eternity as he waited for something, anything to change. He noticed a small group of people filming the event, their phones capturing every detail. The knowledge that the situation was being recorded brought a strange sense of hope. Perhaps the presence of witnesses would prevent any rash action. Perhaps someone would intervene. The director continued to speak calmly, repeating his identity, showing his badge, hoping that reason would prevail. Minutes passed, though it felt much longer. The tension in the air was palpable, the city noise fading into the background as the focus remained on the confrontation. The officer's eyes were fixed on the director, his finger tight on the trigger. The director did not move suddenly, did not make any aggressive gestures, only kept speaking in a steady, composed voice, trying to humanize himself in the eyes of the officer. The world around them seemed suspended, time stretching as fear and uncertainty dominated the moment. The director thought about the training he had given to others, the protocols and strategies for handling crises. He applied every bit of knowledge he had, every lesson learned, to manage his own survival. His heart pounded. His palms were sweaty, yet he maintained an outward calm, knowing that panic could escalate the situation beyond control. Then he noticed the sound of other sirens in the distance. Backup had been called. Additional officers began to arrive at the scene, their presence creating a ripple of tension and confusion. The director kept his hands visible, continuing to speak, aware that the arrival of more people could either diffuse or worsen the situation. He had to remain calm, to act as a stabilizing presence even as fear gripped him. The officer holding him at gunpoint began to show signs of uncertainty, glancing at the approaching backup. The director seized the opportunity to maintain a dialogue, emphasizing cooperation and safety. He repeated his identity clearly, showing his credentials again, making sure every word was audible, every gesture non-threatening. He relied on clarity, on patience, and on the hope that rationality would ultimately prevail. As the backup officers arrived, the first signs of de-escalation began. One of the new officers recognized the mistake immediately, realizing the danger of the situation and the need for careful intervention. Slowly, the tension began to ease as this officer approached, speaking in a calm, authoritative tone, instructing the first officer to lower his weapon. The director remained composed, his body still tense, his mind alert to any sudden change. Finally, the officer at gunpoint lowered his weapon slightly, still unsure, still cautious. The director continued to comply fully, showing that he posed no threat. The bystanders breathed a collective sigh of relief, the tension that had gripped the street beginning to release. The fear was still present, but a sense of safety was slowly returning. The director could finally start to think beyond immediate survival, to consider the implications of what had just occurred. In the midst of this chaos, he reflected on the vulnerability of human life, even for someone in a position of power. He thought about the fragility of safety, the consequences of misjudgment, and the importance of communication and awareness. He realized that this incident could have ended tragically, that a single error could have irreversible consequences. The experience left a lasting mark, an intense reminder of the unpredictable nature of life. The officer finally stepped back, and the director was able to fully display his identification and explain his role. Relief washed over him, but it was mixed with lingering fear and anger. He had faced danger before, but never from someone sworn to protect. The incident highlighted how quickly authority could be misapplied, and how even the most disciplined individuals could be caught in life-threatening circumstances through no fault of their own. As the director was led to safety by the intervening officers, the crowd began to disperse, whispers of shock and disbelief spreading through the street. People who had witnessed the event would remember it for years, an example of how fear and misunderstanding could escalate in an instant. The director's calm and measured response had been crucial, a testament to his experience and training, but it also underscored the delicate balance between control and chaos in tense situations. Once in a secure location, the director took a moment to gather his thoughts, reflecting on the strange mix of fear, relief, and responsibility. He understood that this incident was not just about him, but about the system, about human judgment, and about the consequences of actions taken in moments of high stress. He thought about the officer, wondering about the factors that led to such a dangerous mistake, and the importance of accountability and proper training. By the time he reached his office, the director was emotionally drained but mentally alert. He knew that the day ahead would be filled with reports, statements, and investigations. Yet beneath the exhaustion there was a sense of resolve. He had survived a situation that could have ended in tragedy, and he understood the importance of turning the experience into lessons for the future. He resolved to ensure that no one else would face such danger due to negligence or poor judgment. The ordinary day had turned into an extraordinary ordeal, a stark reminder that life could change in an instant. The FBI director had faced fear, uncertainty, and human error firsthand. He had remained calm, rational, and composed, relying on his experience and training to navigate a dangerous encounter. The incident would leave a mark, shaping his perspective on authority, safety, and human behavior. It was a day he would never forget, a moment that would define his approach to leadership and responsibility in the years to come. The morning that began with simple routines, a quiet drive, and an expectation of normalcy, had transformed into a vivid, intense experience of vulnerability and survival. It had tested the director in ways no training could fully prepare him for, and it would serve as a powerful story of human resilience, caution, and the need for understanding in moments of crisis. The day had begun like any other, but it would end as a story of fear, courage, and the delicate balance between danger and safety. After the initial shock of the confrontation, the FBI director was led to a safer area by the intervening officers. His mind was racing, replaying every moment of the incident. He kept thinking about how quickly a normal day had turned into a life-threatening situation. It was hard to process that something like this could happen to him, someone who spent years understanding danger and teaching others how to handle it. The director was still on high alert. He knew the importance of staying calm, even after such a frightening experience. His training had taught him to focus on the facts, not just emotions, and that helped him begin to assess what had happened. He tried to remember the details, the officer's tone, the way he moved, the commands he had shouted. Every detail mattered, not just for the investigation that would follow, but to understand why such a misunderstanding had occurred. Meanwhile, the first officer, who had caused the incident, was taken aside by other police personnel. He looked shaken, a mixture of anger, embarrassment, and fear on his face. He had acted without fully understanding the situation, and the consequences of that action were now clear. He realized that pointing a gun at someone, without confirming who they were, could have ended in tragedy. It was a sobering moment, a sudden confrontation with the reality of his own judgment. Back on the street, the crowd that had gathered began talking among themselves. Some were shocked, others angry. People were pulling out their phones to share videos and posts online. The incident quickly began spreading through the local community, and the initial disbelief turned into discussions about responsibility, fear, and the role of law enforcement. Witnesses spoke about how unusual it was to see someone of such high authority being treated this way, and how frightening it could have been if things had gone differently. The FBI director, even as he regained some sense of safety, remained aware of the potential danger. He knew that any wrong move from the officer could reignite the tension. He continued to follow instructions, speaking in calm and clear tones whenever needed. His goal was not only to keep himself safe, but to prevent the situation from escalating further. He understood that the officer had acted out of fear, perhaps misreading the situation, and he tried to maintain empathy while also protecting himself. The scene was tense as additional officers arrived. Some had heard about the incident from their colleagues, while others were responding to reports of a man being held at gunpoint. Coordination was key, and senior officers took charge, directing movements and ensuring that the safety of everyone involved was the top priority. They separated the officer responsible from the crowd and the director, allowing space for clear communication and de-escalation. Slowly, the realization of who the man was began to spread among the responding officers. The FBI director showed his badge again, explaining his role clearly. Officers who initially did not know his identity began to understand the seriousness of the situation. Relief mixed with concern as they recognized how close the incident had come to becoming disastrous. Procedures were put in place to secure the area and manage the growing crowd of onlookers. Throughout this, the director kept his focus. Despite the fear and adrenaline still present in his body, he tried to observe, to understand, and to think ahead. He knew that once the immediate danger passed, there would be questions, reports, and an investigation. Every word spoken, every gesture made, and every interaction mattered in shaping the outcomes. He stayed composed, a calm presence in the midst of chaos, relying on his experience and training to navigate each step carefully. He could see the officer responsible now, sitting with other law enforcement personnel nearby. The officer's expression was a mix of guilt and fear. It was clear that the weight of the mistake was sinking in. The director did not approach him aggressively, but he watched carefully, understanding that fear can be a powerful motivator and sometimes a dangerous one. How the officer responded to this moment could determine whether the situation escalated again or began to resolve. The crowd, still present, was whispering, some speaking loudly about the apparent lack of communication and the danger of assuming the worst. Others were amazed at how calm the director had remained despite the threat. Discussion spread quickly about human error, judgment under pressure, and the importance of verifying information before acting. It became clear that this incident was not only a personal event, but also a moment that touched on broader issues about law enforcement and public safety. Inside his mind, the director reflected on the unpredictability of life. He had trained for many dangerous situations, yet this one was different. There was no tactical advantage, no planning or strategy, just a sudden human mistake that could have had irreversible consequences. He thought about the officer's perspective, imagining the fear that must have driven the action, while also recognizing the responsibility that came with carrying a weapon and authority. Emergency protocols were followed as the scene slowly began to stabilize. Witnesses were kept at a distance, officers took statements, and the director was moved to a secure location where he could speak privately with the senior law enforcement personnel. He explained the incident in detail, answering questions about what had happened, the officer's behavior, and his own reactions. His perspective was crucial in understanding the full scope of the event and preventing future occurrences. Despite the relief of safety, a sense of lingering tension remained. The director could feel the adrenaline slowly leaving his body, replaced by reflection and concern. He thought about the officer's future, the potential consequences he would face, and the need for accountability. Mistakes like this could not go unchecked, yet he also understood that fear and human error were part of life. Balancing justice and empathy would be necessary in the coming days. The media soon became involved, reporting on the unusual incident. The story quickly gained attention, and the public reaction was intense. People were shocked that a high-ranking official could be treated this way, and discussions about law enforcement practices, training, and safety were widespread. The director understood the importance of transparency and honesty in handling the aftermath, knowing that the incident had broader implications beyond the immediate event. As interviews and statements were made, the director emphasized the importance of learning from mistakes. He spoke calmly about human error, communication, and the need for continuous training and awareness. He avoided blaming individuals unnecessarily, focusing instead on understanding how the situation had occurred and how it could be prevented in the future. His perspective was measured, insightful, and reflective, showing a commitment to justice and safety without anger or resentment. Throughout the day, the director met with colleagues, legal advisors, and senior officers. They reviewed protocols, assessed the officer's actions, and planned the next steps for accountability. The focus was on understanding the facts, evaluating the risks, and ensuring that all procedures were followed correctly. It was a detailed, careful process that highlighted the complexity of law enforcement, decision-making under stress, and the importance of structured response systems. The officer responsible was eventually placed under review, facing potential disciplinary action and legal consequences. The director observed this process closely, understanding that justice must be served, yet also reflecting on the humanity of the situation. Mistakes, fear, and judgment errors can have serious consequences, and addressing them properly is essential for public trust, officer accountability, and personal responsibility. The day ended with a sense of cautious relief. The director returned to his office, still processing the events. He thought about the people who had witnessed the incident, the officers involved, and the lessons that could be learned. The experience had been terrifying, humbling, and eye-opening. It highlighted the unpredictable nature of life, the power of human error, and the importance of maintaining composure and rational thinking in dangerous situations. As he sat at his desk, reflecting on the morning, he realized that this incident would not be forgotten. It would shape his approach to leadership, communication, and advocacy for improved law enforcement practices. He felt a responsibility not only to himself and his colleagues, but also to the wider community, to ensure that lessons were learned and improvements were made. The experience had been deeply personal, yet it had broader implications that would resonate far beyond the immediate event. The FBI director had faced fear directly, had been vulnerable in a way few people ever were, and had survived a situation that could have ended in tragedy. His calm and composed response had prevented disaster, and his reflection on the incident would guide future actions and policies. The day that began with an ordinary drive had transformed into a profound lesson about human behavior, accountability, and the fragility of safety. It was an experience that would remain with him, shaping his work and perspective for years to come, a story of fear, courage, and the delicate balance between danger and calm. After the tense encounter, the FBI director was escorted to a more secure location by the officers who had intervened. Even though he was physically safe, his mind was still racing. The incident had been surreal, and the reality of what had happened was slowly beginning to sink in. He thought about how quickly a moment of fear and misunderstanding could escalate into something potentially deadly, and how he had relied on his composure and experience to stay alive. Meanwhile, the officer who had held him at gunpoint was being questioned by senior police personnel. He looked troubled and conflicted, clearly shaken by the realization of what had just occurred. He had made a critical mistake, and now he had to face the consequences. He kept replaying the events in his mind, thinking about every decision, every assumption, and every action that had led to the dangerous situation. His training had not prepared him for this personal confrontation with a high-ranking official. Back in the secure area, the FBI director began speaking with the responding officers and senior law enforcement officials. He provided a clear and detailed account of the events, explaining exactly what had occurred from his perspective. He emphasized the importance of understanding the sequence of actions, the reasoning behind each decision, and the human reactions that had contributed to the tense encounter. The officials listened carefully, recognizing the need to document everything accurately for the upcoming investigation. The director also took a moment to reflect on the officer's mindset. He understood that fear could cloud judgment and that anyone could make a mistake under pressure. He thought about how training, communication, and awareness were critical in preventing such incidents, and he resolved to ensure that the lessons from this event would be used to improve procedures and policies. The experience had highlighted not only the vulnerability of those in power, but also the responsibilities of those entrusted with authority. The scene outside was still chaotic. Bystanders had begun talking among themselves, some sharing videos and posts online. The story was quickly spreading through social media and the local community. People expressed shock and concern, questioning how such an error could happen and how it could be prevented in the future. The director knew that the incident would attract public attention and that transparency and accountability would be essential in handling the aftermath. As he continued to speak with law enforcement officials, he began to think strategically about the next steps. The officer responsible needed to be held accountable, but it was also important to approach the situation with fairness and understanding. The director considered the potential consequences for the officer, the department, and the public's trust. He emphasized the importance of balancing justice with empathy, recognizing that mistakes, while serious, were often the result of fear, stress, and human error. The investigation moved forward, with the director providing his statements and helping the officials understand the situation in detail. Each question asked was met with careful, thoughtful answers. He described how the officer had approached, how he had responded, and the series of actions that had led to the escalation. His focus was on clarity and accuracy, ensuring that the investigation would be based on facts rather than assumptions. Meanwhile, the officer responsible was being monitored and counseled by senior personnel. He was made to understand the gravity of his actions and the potential consequences, both legally and professionally. He was visibly remorseful, realizing that his single moment of misjudgment had endangered a high-ranking official's life and shaken public trust. It was a difficult moment, a confrontation with reality that would not be easily forgotten. Throughout the day, the FBI director remained calm and composed. He knew that his response would set an example for others and that how he handled the situation could influence the outcome of the investigation. He continued to emphasize cooperation, clear communication, and the need for rational thinking under pressure. His professionalism served as a stabilizing force, preventing further escalation and ensuring that the focus remained on resolving the situation safely and effectively. As hours passed, the director also reflected on the role of the public and the witnesses. Their presence had been significant, and their observations would be important in understanding the sequence of events. He thought about how people perceive authority, how fear and misunderstanding can spread quickly, and how critical it is for those in power to act responsibly and transparently. The incident had become a learning experience, not only for law enforcement but for the community as a whole. During the investigation, The director was asked to describe the officer's behavior, the commands given, and his own responses. He did so with precision, recounting every detail from the moment the officer exited his vehicle to the intervention of the backup officers. He spoke about the fear he had felt, the strategies he had used to stay calm, and the importance of maintaining composure in life-threatening situations. His account was measured, insightful, and clear, highlighting both the dangers and the lessons inherent in the experience. The officer responsible, while remorseful, was also questioned about his own perspective. He explained that he had perceived a threat, acted quickly, and failed to verify the situation properly. He admitted his mistake and acknowledged the potential consequences. His candidness was important for the investigation, as it helped officials understand how such errors can occur and what measures could be taken to prevent similar incidents in the future. As the day wore on, the FBI director began to regain a sense of control. He had survived a dangerous encounter, managed to stay calm under pressure, and was now contributing to a process that would ensure accountability and safety. He reflected on the human elements of fear, judgment, and responsibility, recognizing that even experienced professionals could be vulnerable in unexpected circumstances. His insight and composure would play a key role in shaping the outcome of the investigation and improving protocols. The incident also highlighted the importance of teamwork. The officers who had intervened acted quickly and effectively, preventing what could have become a tragic outcome. Their coordination, communication, and decisive action were crucial in de-escalating the situation. The director recognized the value of leadership, collaboration, and situational awareness, understanding that even small actions could have a significant impact when lives were at stake. By the evening, the immediate danger had passed, but the implications of the incident were far from over. The director spent time reviewing the events, speaking with legal advisors, and preparing for the official investigation. He thought carefully about how the situation could have been handled differently, what measures could be implemented to prevent future mistakes, and how to ensure that accountability was maintained without fostering fear or resentment among law enforcement personnel. He also considered the officers' perspective and the lessons that could be drawn from the situation. Mistakes, while serious, often stemmed from fear, stress, and lack of proper communication. Addressing these issues through training, awareness, and clear protocols could reduce the likelihood of similar incidents in the future. The director's focus on solutions rather than solely on blame reflected his experience, empathy, and commitment to public safety. As he reflected, he realized the broader implications of the event. It was not just a personal ordeal, but a story about human error, the responsibility of authority, and the fragility of safety. It demonstrated how quickly ordinary situations could escalate into life-threatening encounters, and how essential it was for all individuals, law enforcement and civilians alike, to remain vigilant, aware, and composed. The director's experience became a powerful lesson in leadership, accountability, and resilience. The media had begun reporting the story, emphasizing the unusual nature of the incident and the danger involved. The public reaction was intense, with discussions about law enforcement training, accountability, and communication spreading across social platforms and news outlets. The director understood the importance of transparency, honesty, and responsible communication in addressing public concerns. He approached the situation thoughtfully, ensuring that his statements were clear, accurate, and constructive. As night fell, the FBI director finally returned to a quieter space, reflecting on the day's events. He was exhausted, both physically and emotionally, but also resolute. He understood that the incident would leave a lasting impact on him, the officer involved, the law enforcement community, and the public. It was a stark reminder of the unpredictable nature of life, the consequences of fear-driven decisions, and the importance of maintaining composure, empathy, and accountability in critical moments. The experience reinforced the director's commitment to improving procedures, fostering better communication, and advocating for training that could prevent such incidents in the future. He knew that the lessons learned from this encounter would influence policies, protocols, and practices, ultimately enhancing safety and trust between law enforcement and the public. The day had been a test of courage, judgment, and resilience, and it would serve as a powerful example of leadership and responsibility. The FBI director had faced fear directly, managed to stay calm under extreme stress, and contributed to a process that would hold others accountable while improving safety measures. The incident had been intense, life-altering, and eye-opening. It underscored the importance of clear communication, proper training, and human empathy in high-pressure situations. The director's experience became a story of courage, reflection, and the delicate balance between authority and responsibility, offering lessons that would resonate far beyond the immediate event. The next day began with a quiet intensity. The FBI director returned to his office, but the events of the previous day were still vivid in his mind. He thought about every detail, every decision, every moment that had brought him to the edge of danger. He knew that while the immediate threat had passed, the consequences of the incident were far from over. There were questions to answer, investigations to conduct, and lessons to extract from the experience. The department launched a formal inquiry into the officer's actions. The investigation was thorough, examining not just the incident itself but the circumstances that had led to it. The officer's decision-making, training, and judgment were all under scrutiny. Interviews were conducted with witnesses, fellow officers, and the FBI director himself. Every detail mattered, from the officer's approach to the way commands were given, to the reactions of those involved. The FBI director cooperated fully, providing a calm, clear account of everything he had experienced. He spoke about the fear he had felt, the strategies he used to remain safe, and the importance of clear communication. His input was essential in understanding the full scope of the incident. He emphasized that the event was not just about a mistake by one officer, but about a series of human errors, misunderstandings, and missed opportunities for verification. As the investigation progressed, the director reflected on the broader implications. The incident was a stark reminder of how fragile trust and safety could be. Even individuals in positions of power were not immune to danger when fear and misunderstanding took over. He realized that accountability and training were critical, not just for the officer involved, but for the entire department and the public they served. The officer responsible was suspended while the inquiry continued. He appeared contrite, aware of the severity of his actions. He faced a mix of emotions, shame, fear, and concern for how this would affect his career and personal life. The director recognized the importance of holding the officer accountable, but also understood that mistakes, while serious, were human. The focus needed to be on learning from the event and preventing similar occurrences in the future. The FBI director also worked with his colleagues to analyze the incident from multiple perspectives. They discussed the importance of communication between local law enforcement and federal authorities, the need for situational awareness, and the consequences of assumptions. Every conversation, every meeting was focused on understanding, correcting, and improving. The goal was to create a system that minimized risk and ensured that similar mistakes would be less likely in the future. Community reaction was strong. News of the incident spread quickly, sparking discussions about law enforcement practices, accountability, and the dangers of snap judgments. Public opinion demanded answers, and the FBI director took this responsibility seriously. He emphasized transparency, honesty, and the need for constructive change. His calm, professional approach helped to reassure the community that the matter was being handled with the seriousness it deserved. As days passed, the investigation revealed several key factors that had contributed to the incident. Miscommunication, fear-driven assumptions, and a lack of verification had all played roles. Training gaps and procedural weaknesses were also identified. The FBI director took note of each lesson, knowing that understanding these factors was essential for improving protocols and preventing future mistakes. The officer faced formal charges related to negligence and misuse of authority. The process was difficult for him, as he had to confront the reality of his actions and their consequences. The director, while focused on justice, also reflected on the human side of the story. Mistakes happen, but the system must address them fairly, ensuring accountability while also providing opportunities for learning and rehabilitation. Throughout the inquiry, the FBI director continued his daily work, but the incident remained a constant presence in his mind. He thought about the fragility of safety, the responsibility of authority, and the importance of remaining vigilant. The experience had changed his perspective, deepening his understanding of human behavior under stress and the potential for error in high-pressure situations. He also considered the role of the public and the witnesses. Their observations were crucial in understanding the incident fully. The director appreciated the importance of transparency and public trust. By providing accurate information and engaging with the community responsibly, he helped to ensure that the incident could serve as a learning experience for everyone involved. The investigation also highlighted the importance of teamwork. Officers who had intervened had prevented the situation from becoming fatal. Their coordination, communication, and decisive action were crucial in de-escalating the threat. The FBI director recognized the value of leadership and collaboration, understanding that in moments of danger, every small action could make a significant difference. As the officer's case moved forward, discussions about reforms and improvements continued. The FBI director advocated for better training, clear communication protocols, and awareness programs to reduce the risk of similar incidents. His experience became a case study in handling fear, human error, and the responsibilities of authority. It was a story that combined danger, accountability, and the potential for positive change. The officer was eventually charged and faced a judicial process that emphasized accountability and public safety. The FBI director observed the proceedings, understanding that justice needed to be balanced with fairness and context. The officer's actions had been serious, but the lessons learned from the incident could improve the system and prevent similar mistakes in the future. The director's reflections focused on ensuring that fear and misunderstanding would not result in unnecessary harm. Throughout this period, the FBI director continued to speak about the incident thoughtfully, highlighting the importance of calm under pressure, the value of clear communication, and the need for ongoing training. His approach was measured and empathetic, acknowledging the human factors while emphasizing responsibility and improvement. He used the experience to educate, to advocate for better practices, and to remind others of the fragile nature of safety. The incident became more than just a personal ordeal. It became a symbol of the challenges faced by law enforcement, the risks of human error, and the need for continuous vigilance. The FBI director's calm professional response had prevented disaster and set an example for others. He worked tirelessly to ensure that the lessons learned would influence policies, procedures, and public understanding. By the end of this part of the story, the FBI director had not only survived a dangerous encounter, but had also helped to guide a process that emphasized accountability, learning, and improvement. The incident had revealed weaknesses in systems and highlighted the importance of careful decision-making, communication, and empathy. It had also demonstrated the human side of authority, showing that even those trained to protect can make mistakes under pressure. The experience strengthened his commitment to public safety, procedural clarity, and responsible leadership. He understood that the lessons from this incident would resonate beyond the immediate parties involved, influencing future protocols, officer training, and public awareness. The day that began with fear had transformed into an opportunity for reflection, growth, and positive change. The FBI director's journey through accountability and investigation highlighted the complexity of human behavior, the responsibility of authority, and the potential for reform when mistakes are addressed thoughtfully and constructively. The days following the investigation were filled with reflection, planning, and a slow return to normal routines for the FBI director. Despite the resolution of the immediate threat, the incident had left an indelible mark on him. He thought about how easily fear and misunderstanding could escalate into life-threatening situations, and how critical it was to handle such moments with composure and clarity. He also considered the human side of the officer involved, the public who had witnessed the event, and the broader implications for law enforcement procedures. The officer responsible was formally charged and faced the judicial process for his actions. This outcome was a reminder that accountability was essential and that authority must be exercised responsibly. The FBI director watched the proceedings closely, understanding that while mistakes were human, consequences were necessary to maintain trust and safety. The officer's remorse was evident, and it was clear that the experience would profoundly affect him for years to come. Meanwhile, the director focused on the lessons that could be drawn from the incident. He worked closely with his team to review protocols, communication strategies, and training procedures. They analyzed how fear-driven decisions could escalate, how assumptions could cloud judgment, and how coordination between local and federal authorities could be improved. Each step was aimed at preventing similar situations and ensuring that safety was prioritized. For both officers and the public, the FBI director also reflected on the importance of empathy and understanding in moments of crisis. He recognized that the officers' actions, while serious and dangerous, were influenced by stress, fear, and a lack of verification. The director used this understanding to guide his recommendations, emphasizing training, awareness, and clear communication over punishment alone. He wanted to create an environment where mistakes could be addressed constructively, reducing the likelihood of recurrence. Public interest in the incident remained high. Media reports continued to discuss the event, highlighting the unusual nature of a high-ranking official being held at gunpoint and the consequences for the officer involved. The FBI director took this opportunity to speak publicly about the importance of accountability, training, and communication in law enforcement. His statements were clear, measured, and empathetic, helping to reassure the public and emphasize the lessons learned. As he returned to his daily work, the director noticed a renewed sense of purpose. The experience had underscored the importance of vigilance, preparedness, and the human elements of authority and responsibility. He thought about how he could use his position to advocate for better practices, safer procedures, and stronger communication between law enforcement agencies. The incident had been a wake-up call, a moment that transformed his approach to leadership and policy. The officer responsible for the incident was sentenced, serving time that reflected the seriousness of his actions. The judicial process highlighted the importance of accountability, while also acknowledging the complexity of human behavior under stress. The director reflected on how this resolution demonstrated the balance between justice and learning, ensuring that the incident served as both a cautionary tale and a catalyst for improvement. Throughout this period, the FBI director also focused on the well-being of those around him. He spoke with colleagues, officers, and staff about the incident, emphasizing the importance of maintaining calm, supporting one another, and learning from experiences. He shared insights about human behavior under pressure, the dangers of assumptions, and the value of empathy and clear communication. These discussions helped to strengthen the department and build trust among team members. The experience also prompted broader discussions within law enforcement about training and protocols. The director participated in meetings and workshops, providing guidance and insight into how fear and misunderstanding could escalate situations. His perspective, informed by personal experience, added a unique and valuable dimension to these discussions. Policies were reviewed and adjusted to improve verification procedures, communication, and response strategies. As time passed, the FBI director noticed the subtle ways the incident had influenced his approach to work and leadership. He was more attentive to communication, more aware of potential misunderstandings, and more proactive in preventing conflict. He had developed an even stronger sense of empathy and understanding for both colleagues and the public. Recognizing that fear and stress could affect anyone, regardless of position or experience. The community, too, had learned from the incident. Public discussions about law enforcement, accountability, and human error became more nuanced. People began to understand the challenges officers faced, the importance of verification and training, and the need for transparency and oversight. The director's measured response and public statements played a significant role in shaping these conversations, providing a model of calm, thoughtful leadership. Reflecting on the incident, the FBI director realized that survival, accountability, and growth were all interconnected. His calm response had prevented tragedy. His cooperation with the investigation had ensured accountability, and his reflections and recommendations were fostering improvement. The event had tested him in ways that no prior experience had, and the lessons he took from it would influence his work and leadership for years to come. The director also thought about the human side of the story: the officer, the witnesses, the public, and his own feelings of fear and vulnerability. He recognized that every person involved had been affected, and that the incident was a reminder of the shared responsibility inherent in authority and community. Understanding these perspectives helped him approach future challenges with empathy, awareness, and careful judgment. By the end of this chapter, the FBI director had not only survived a dangerous encounter, but had turned it into a source of insight, learning, and positive change. The officer responsible had been held accountable, training and protocols had been reassessed, and public understanding had deepened. The incident served as a powerful example of how fear, human error, and responsibility intersect, and how careful reflection, empathy, and leadership can transform a dangerous moment into an opportunity for growth and improvement. The story concluded with a sense of resolution, but also ongoing responsibility. The FBI director remained vigilant, committed to improving procedures, advocating for clear communication and better training, and ensuring that accountability and empathy were balanced in every situation. The experience had left a lasting mark, shaping his approach to leadership, law enforcement, and human behavior. It was a story of fear, courage, accountability, and growth, a testament to resilience and the power of learning from even the most challenging experiences.